So welcome to our Lagoon vlog, but first we're making one quick stop, and that is at
the Grand Canyon!
Lagoon is an amusement park just 18 miles north of Salt Lake City, and it goes all the way back to 1886. There's really nothing else around Lagoon, so it's not an easy park for coaster enthusiasts to get to. I live in Southern California, so it's only about an 11-hour drive from my house, making it a reasonable weekend trip. I've been here twice, once in July 2017 and again in August 2019. My last trip here was my favorite coaster day of 2019, and today I'm going to explain why. This is my half vlog, half review of Lagoon. We arrived at Lagoon right around opening on a Sunday, and the weather was perfect. The reason I was so excited to be back at Lagoon, even though they hadn't added a new coaster in the 2 years since I'd been there, was that I got to bring Sophie with me. I don't think there's another park in the country with so many rides that someone under 48 inches could ride. This is the first major plus. These are family-friendly thrill coasters, and they will even provide booster seats for kids that are right around the height limit, so they aren't left out. Sophie had just ridden her first looping coaster a couple weeks before when we went on Revolution at Magic Mountain, so we had the opportunity to add 2 more with Wicked and Colossus. She was technically tall enough for Cannibal, but she wasn't ready for this thing yet. As soon as we got up to the park, we noticed that Cannibal was broken, stuck on the top of the lift. So we went to the right side of the park, which is packed with coasters. We went straight to Colossus, which was running one train, but these operations were quick. That would be a theme of the day. This is one of the best parks for operations I've ever seen, at least for the day that I was there. I went to ride Colossus, but I was hit with a stark reminder about Lagoon, and this is a con, that you can't bring your bags into the station for just about any ride. Cannibal, Wicked, Colossus, Spider. I don't recall the situation for every single ride, but on most of them, you need to get a locker or leave your stuff with a non-rider. I was with a group of 5, so I carried the bags on that first ride while Sophie picked up the new credit. But I did get to come back around and ride it with her, and this was her reaction on getting a re-ride.
Alright, so Sophie just rode Colossus for the first time. This is Colossus. Sophie, what'd you think?
I want to go a million times!
So we're at least gonna go one more time. I don't know about a million, but she liked it so much, we gotta do it again.
After I got my lap with Sophie on Colossus, she went over to ride the Music Express, while the other half of our group went over for our first ride on Wicked. She was understandably a little nervous about Wicked. Alright, so where are we going first?
Wicked?
Wicked. You gonna ride it without looking at it?
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
This is the one and only Zero Tower launch coaster in the world, and I personally love it. We couldn't get Sophie on it just yet, so we hitched a ride on the Sky Ride, which takes you from one side of the park to the other. It's good to be familiar with the layout of this park before you go. If you walk in and go straight ahead, you'll find yourself in the kids area, which includes 3 kid-friendly coasters, and the water park, which is included in the price of admission, which Sophie was very excited about. If you turn right, you'll find a nice cluster of coasters at the far end of the park. Colossus, Wicked, Spider, and Wild Mouse. Roller coaster is also on that side, but it's closer to the park entrance. The other side of the park only has 2 coasters, Jetstar 2 and Cannibal, but this also has some good flat rides as well as the drop tower and the giant Ferris wheel. On the extreme end of this side of the park, you'll find the newest Lagoon project, the indoor coaster Primordial, which may open in 2021 or 2022. So we picked up the Sky Ride on the far south end of the park and took a ride all the way to the north side, which drops you off right by Jetstar 2. Cannibal was open by now, so we got one ride. Sophie had to sit this one out because she wasn't quite ready for it, but we thought she may have a shot at agreeing to ride it at some point that day.
So just got off Cannibal. We're trying to get Sophie on it, but first, we gotta ride it a few more times before she gets enough courage to ride it.
I figured I could at least get my wife on it, but when we came back to wait in line, it broke down.
So Cannibal's line is getting really long now, but it's not even open because it keeps breaking down, so yeah. Hopefully we can get more than one ride on it today.
While we were on that side of the park, I got Sophie on Jetstar 2, the old Schwarzkopf. In order to ride this, you need 2 things. You need to have someone to ride with because there's no single riders allowed in these sleds. And you need to be comfortable sitting in someone else's lap, or having someone else sit in your lap. I rode with Sophie, so she got the front row. It wasn't until after we got off that I realized that this has a 50-inch height limit, and Sophie was only around 48 inches, so oops. It's very intense, but Sophie enjoyed it. We dialed it down a notch with the kids' coasters, and from my experience at the park the 2 times I've been there, these always have the longest lines. First was Bombora, a very solid family coaster, and then the Bat, the Vekoma Hang and Bang. This always has the most dreadful line. It doesn't move, and it's always huge. I'm not sure if the kids' coasters always have longer lines because this is more of a family park, or if it's just because of the one-train ops and the bad capacity. But if you go to Lagoon, just be aware of how long the lines for Bombora and the Bat can get. But ultimately, on the Bat, we got front row and Sophie loved it.
We're getting front row on the Bat.
There was one credit I couldn't get in 2017 because it was way too kiddie of a coaster. But now that I had Sophie with me, I figured I would notch the credit on Puff the Little Fire Dragon.
This is going to be my number 397. And Sophie, I lost count for yours for now. I think you're around like 43.
43? I want to have 1,000.
1,000? All right, let's get on that. These guys over here, these guys don't want credits. But I do. Sophie, you want credits? Yeah, me too.
Right across the path from Puff was Roller Coaster, the 99-year-old wooden coaster that's a staple at the park. Since I had been there in 2017, it had gotten new Millennium Flyer trains, and the station and logo were completely redone, showing Lagoon's commitment to this classic ride. And I still think it's running great. For someone Sophie's size, the bumpiness could cause her to hit her head on the seat backs. But for anyone with even a little bit of tolerance for an old bumpy coaster, Roller Coaster is still a great airtime-filled ride, and the Millennium Flyers make it that much better. We continued to pick up credits for Sophie as we walked around the park. So next, we hit up the Wild Mouse.
It's my favorite safety animation right here. Like, what is that? Come on.
Usually Wild Mouse coasters are one-and-done credits, but I had one of the wildest rides ever on this, which led to this reaction.
So we just rode the Wild Mouse. That was insane. Sophie, what do you think?
It was really rough, but still I loved it.
It was like laterals and airtime, and it was like the craziest Wild Mouse I've ever been on. Sophie, what do you think? Craziest Wild Mouse?
Yeah.
I think so too.
But I've been on crazier rides.
Sophie is a big fan of spinning coasters, so we had to get her on Spider, the Maurer spinning coaster that has a reputation of being one of the most intense spinning coasters, and it lived up to its reputation. All of these coasters that Sophie was knocking out all gave her enough courage to finally try Wicked. I got to watch her on her first ride and record the action off-ride, but right after that, we went back around and I got a front row ride with her. She still can't believe that she rode a coaster with a vertical drop and a 0G roll. This was also her first launch coaster, so Wicked really holds a special place on her credit list. I mentioned how many coasters they have that are family friendly. Of the 10 they have to offer, Sophie picked up 9 of these credits. The one she missed out on is Cannibal, which is legit one of the most insane coasters I've ever ridden. So it's something to look forward to the next time we go to Utah. Once we got Sophie all the credits, she went off to enjoy the water park. We took this opportunity to lap Cannibal a few times. This is by far the best coaster in the park. It's actually one of the best coasters in America. And I've never seen this have more than a 15-minute wait from the 2 times I've been there. And both times were weekends in the summer. This could be for a few reasons. It's way in the corner of the park, and you have to be looking for it in order to find it. It runs several trains at 12 riders per train, so people are always loading and dispatching, which also makes it a great coaster to photograph, since there's always multiple trains on the course at all times. Finally, if Lagoon is more of a family park, this is not a ride that kids would enjoy. I love how I can get a ride on this world-class coaster without waiting more than a few minutes. And another great thing about Lagoon is their single rider line on Cannibal and Wicked. I took advantage of both of these each time I've been to Lagoon, and you can almost always get on either of these rides within a minute. The downside of this is that in order to make this work, there is assigned seating. The assigned seating exists on most of their rides with the exception of Colossus and Roller Coaster. The good thing is that Cannibal has 3-row cars, and Wicked has 2-row cars, so no matter what row you're in, the experience is not going to change that much. But if you want the front row, it's kind of a crapshoot. I've never been assigned the front row on the 10 or so times that I've ridden Cannibal, but the one ride I got in the front was when I used the single rider line. Go figure. Another thing you'll find about Lagoon is the lack of queue space. Wicked is the only coaster that I know of that has switchbacks. I'm very surprised that when they built Cannibal in 2015, they built no switchbacks. When the line spills out into the queue, it can scare people into thinking that it's a long line. But once you realize that all there is to it is to walk up a ramp and then twist into the station, that line that's on the footpath is actually only about a 15-minute wait. I've never seen a big line at Lagoon. Maybe that happens during Halloween or holiday weekends, but I can imagine how long that cannibal line can stretch into the park if it was really busy. We got a ride on the Ferris wheel, which is set up right behind Cannibal, so there's some great shots of Cannibal that you can get from there. Since all of the other major coasters are on the other side of the park, it's kind of far away to get good shots. But this is a great spot to get pictures of the construction site of Primordial, which is being built outside the park entirely. Another interesting thing about Lagoon is the hand stamp they give you when you enter the park with your ticket. The ride ops want to see this stamp before you board each ride. I guess you can get a ticket that doesn't include all of the rides and you can buy ride tickets, but I've never seen that option and it's not listed as an option on their website. If you have a Costco membership, you can get a discount ticket at the local Costco stores in the Salt Lake area. I got my 2019 tickets for $50 a piece, which is $20 less than the online price. Back to that hand stamp. It's more of like a paint than a stamp, and throughout the day, that thing really starts wearing off. You have to be careful not to wash your hand that well, and keep your hands out of your pockets so the stamp does not wear off. You could probably ask for a re-stamp if you need one, but it seems like a wristband would be way easier, and it would be way more sanitary than a stamp. That thing touches thousands of hands every day. I left the park for a while just to get video and pictures from outside the gates. This is the best place to film Cannibal. I just kept wandering back until I found something that would stop me from going further, but I never ran into any fences, so I had free reign of the north end of the park, which was really nice. I also got some really good angles of Roller Coaster and Wicked. Both of these run into or alongside the parking lot. So if you're a photographer and you want good footage, go outside the park for these rides to get the best angles. One thing we skipped was Terror Ride, their classic haunted house. And I know this park is famous for it, but this always does attract a long line from what I've seen, and it's not my favorite kind of ride, so I didn't have the desire to wait in line for it. But I would recommend not forgetting about it if you're interested. The park also has animals, but they're not really front and center. They're off in the south end of the park near Colossus, which doesn't get a ton of foot traffic. I got some video of their kangaroos and their alpacas. I know I didn't talk too much about my opinion of the coasters here, but I am planning on doing a video where I rank all the coasters, so I'll go more in depth on that video. Spending a day with Sophie at a park where she could ride 9 of their coasters was something really cool. Lagoon is a family-friendly destination with plenty of thrill rides to keep the teenagers and the thrill seekers happy. They do a very good job at handling crowds with their fast operations. This is not a 2-bit park. Don't be fooled by its age or location. It's a legit major park that would hold up anywhere in the country. Not everything about the park is perfect, but they do a lot more good than bad. If you're an enthusiast and you can get a flight out to Salt Lake City, this park is worth the trip. If for nothing else than Cannibal alone. This is not objectively the greatest park in the country, but it does offer something different than your typical chain park. It has a perfect mix for everybody. If I had to make one improvement one way or the other, I would try to get more thrill rides here because they are heavy on the family attractions. And another elite thrill coaster would really make this an enthusiast destination. Primordial looks to be a shooting dark ride coaster, which is more of a family coaster. But maybe in the future, they can add the next Cannibal that really put the park on the map. Alright, let's do a little post-game interview with Sophie. So Sophie, how many coasters did you ride yesterday?
9.
And what is your new coaster count?
46.
And what was your favorite ride at the park?
Wicked, but it hurt my head.
Okay, so we're gonna come back and ride Cannibal later? Maybe in a couple years? Okay, we'll come back in a couple years.
10 years.
Like 2 years, but not 10.
I'm gonna be 8.
You're gonna be 8 and you're gonna ride, whoa. So in 2 years, you're gonna be 8 and we're gonna ride Cannibal. Deal? Deal. So maybe in 2021, we'll be back to ride Primordial and Cannibal. That's all I have for Lagoon. Let me know what you think of the park in the comments below, and I'll see you guys all next time.